Welcome to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Herb Mossman. Our tape day today, or our recording day, I'm not using tape anymore, so it's I'm using a Sony MP3, so it's not a tape date anymore, it's a recording date. We're in Ridgewood, even though this is New York City Visions, a component of Visions. We're not actually in New York City right now. We're in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And I'll give you a little background. So first of all, my guest is Joy Herald. Joy, hi, and then I'm going to give a little background, and then we're going to get into our conversation. Hi, Joy.
Well, hi. Hi, Herb. It's very nice to be with you today after our many years apart.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk today about all sorts of things that go bump in the night, spirits, long-distance viewing, spiritualism in general, and funny experiences that I've had over the years in my metaphysical career.
Well, I guess that covers that.
Hope so.
Okay, Joy Herald, when I had a radio program in New York City during the 80s, I was on WMCA, and Joy, I had a couple of psychics, one Dr. Jerry Lee, and then Joy, I met you at Learning Annex.
Yes.
You did classes at Learning Annex.
Yes, I had taught there for quite a while.
Right, and that's how we hooked up at Learning Annex. And then I wound up. We did a couple of pieces together, and then I did a tour of a place called Morris Jamel Mansion in the Bronx, New York, and it's supposedly haunted. And Washington actually had his offices there during the Revolutionary War. He actually stayed there and lived there, and he could watch both rivers from that height in the Bronx to see if they were under siege at that point. And as I was doing the tour, we were up on the second floor, and Patrick Groom, I think either Broom or Groom, he was the curator, and we got up to a floor with the pantry and the cupboards and dolls. There were some dolls up there, and I guess a Queen Anne chair, a King Louis chair, whatever this chair was. Do you know a Queen Anne chair? Or?
I don't think it was a Queen Anne, but it was early English period of some kind. I think it was a wooden chair with this pillow that was covered over for the seat.
Right.
But that's all I remember about it.
Right. And Patrick, as we were talking, I could see he felt a little uncomfortable. And I asked Patrick, what's going on? He says, well, frankly, I really don't like the very odd feel I get when I come up into this area. And I wound up calling Joy. A week or so later, I said, and I wouldn't give you the house. I waited till the day before and then told you where we were going to be meeting. And you went into the house the next day. We met up there in the Bronx. You went into the house. You came down. I waited for you in the garden. And you came out, and we sat down. And a couple of things I kind of knew, the ballroom and all that, with the dances. You said this is what. And then you talked about that chair. And you said the spirit is in that chair, and when that spirit goes through the house, it begins in that chair. That's the spirit's chair. And then I knew that Patrick was onto something, and I knew I had found a person with true vision. Do you remember that?
I do recall that, and I remember when we were out in the garden, I could actually hear the music and hear the conversations of all these people, like from a distance. Couldn't really make out what they were saying, but you knew it was a party, and that amazed me too. I wasn't expecting to pick that up, but that's what came through. And then the chair, I remember that something was emanating from that chair area, but at the time we never really followed through on it, except you're telling me now that the curator or the custodian of the building said that later on that was the area he was very sensitive to.
Right,
which I thought was interesting.
Early on. And then I also mentioned, as your son and you picked me up at the bus terminal here, and we were driving out, and I revealed to you at that point that what they did in that area is they kind of gutted it and put up the computers there. So what would have happened to the spirit?
Oh boy. Well, see, I feel everything has energy. Like chairs have energy, stones have energy, every piece of furniture, everything we're surrounded by this energy, which is for the most part invisible. So even though they put computers in there, the computers also are made out of what do we call atoms and neutrons and all these other things that make up matter. So they will be affected, the computers will be affected as well. So they might be maybe a little temperamental. Computers might get a little temperamental because spirits really do express themselves And they move around sometimes too, and sometimes they disappear altogether. But my guess would be, with the high electrical input there with the computers, that it would be interesting to find out if they've had any difficulties with the computers, or that anyone has reported having some unusual experiences while working with that computer system.
How would the spirit feel about that? I mean, is the spirit there? What is the feeling that the spirit would have?
Well, I think spirits. I think spirits are just as different as you and I are. Some spirits are active, some are very passive. Some spirits stay around for a while, some leave. And do they have an opinion? I don't know if they have an opinion. I think they have an essence, and the essence expresses itself because somebody needs to be, some door needs to be opened in someone's mind. And so the spirits will manifest around people who maybe don't believe in spirits, and then suddenly they're converted to realize we're not alone. And then other people have to have the experience, for maybe they want to see a dead relative they miss very much, and they want that person to connect with them. So they make themselves present. So I think they have a reason for being. We don't always understand sometimes why, but I've never met anybody who hasn't had a spiritual experience or felt a spirit or anything. I've never known anyone who hasn't been changed by it.
Would the spirit be likely to leave that space?
Yes, could very well leave the space, because they're fluid. They're ectoplasm, made up of ectoplasm, which is sort of a white, airy-fairy couple of ounces of weight, which we might call the soul or the spirit. And they can move around, and sometimes people think that a spirit's with them all the time, not necessarily. Your mom and dad might be around once in a while, or your father, your mother, your uncle, your brother, your boyfriend, and then they're there for a reason for a while, maybe to manifest a message or to contact you or to be helpful. Then they disappear, they're not there anymore. So people have to understand it's like a revolving door. It's very active, and it changes all the while. Some people do have spirit guides and deceased relatives who remain with them for long periods of time, and sometimes for a whole lifetime. But I found in my practice that is not the majority.
I was talking about staying at a hotel for a while in South Carolina, and I'd be watching TV, looking straight ahead to the TV, and the kitchen was off to the left. And every once in a while, at the corner of my eye, I would see sort of like a shadow pass through, heading, I think, well, because of where I was sitting, it would be north to south from behind me, ahead into the kitchen area. What was I?
Well, all right, we call that peripheral. We call that peripheral vision, side vision, where you sense a shadow or something going past you, or walking past you, or even flying past you. And then when you go to turn your head to capture it visually, it disappears. It's not there. So we call those peripheral spirits, where they're there but they won't be seen. But you know they're there because your peripheral vision captures them. So they're letting you know, yes, we're here, but you can't look at us directly. And for what reason? Well, maybe the person doesn't have to look at them directly. They just know there's a presence there, and they can do with it what they will. They can either make contact with it, or they can let it go and say, oh, that's nice. I knew there must have been guardian angels around me or something, so that's wonderful.
Something was happening. Wow, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
And, well, I was going to say something a little bit off the subject, but you mentioned to me that you had been looking at the Hudson River several
a year after 9/11.
Yeah, a year after 9/11, and you saw this black form, the black the
mist came across.
Spooky black mist or something.
Coming from the towers.
And
then
going all the way up to the George Washington Bridge.
Well, I was only a couple of blocks. I was heading to the George. Yeah.
All right. Now, I've had a similar experience after attending the slam. I think you're probably familiar with slam. It's when people get up and do storytelling, and they have a big dinner and cocktails and this and that. Well, what turned out is John Bernadette, who wrote Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, happened to be at this affair, and I met him. And we were talking about Venice and this haunted house in the Palazzo on the Grand Canal and so forth and so on. And I got intrigued by it, And I won't go any further about what I'm doing about it because that's a secret. I'll have to tell you at another time. But at any rate, so the Palazzo story really intrigued me. And one of my clients was down on her luck, and she couldn't pay me the fee that I charge for my consultation. So she said, in lieu of this, I will do some research for you. It turns out her last name was the same as that, oh my goodness, Woody Allen, whose real name I think is Cronenberg, was before he changed it. She was also a Cronenberg, which I thought was strange because as the years went by, Woody tried to buy the Palazzo in Venice and they wouldn't sell it to him. It's a mysterious place. It has not been sold yet. Nobody wants to live there, but that's another story. So, and anyway, to get back to it, she sent me all this research. The research was fascinating. It was almost tailor-made for a blockbuster screenplay. And the night that it arrived in the FedEx boxes, the material arrived, they put them on my dining room table. No one would go near the dining room table. They just kept staring at the boxes and saying, Mom, you better get rid of those boxes. It's a funny energy coming out of there. And I said, oh, I know, I don't want to open them either, but I thought, this is ridiculous, superstitious idiocy. So finally I did open them up and put the material in my bookshelf to get to later, because I really didn't want to even open them. I didn't tell the kids that, though. That night, after the slam, I came home. I was a little bit, excited about everything, and thinking about what John had told me about this haunted palazzo. And all of a sudden, I look up, and the whole room is pitch black, just like the pitch black you saw out the window coming up off the Hudson River. And it became oppressive, and it became so heavy, and it almost zoomed down. It was like a huge black cloud, zoomed down on me, and I thought I was going to lose. I thought I couldn't breathe anymore. So in my mind, mentally, I said, please dismiss yourself, get out of here. I will not tolerate this, so be gone. And sure enough, it just whizzed right through the room. Didn't whiz either. It kind of took its time, unfortunately, and it just floated out of the window and away. Now, I think it was all the malvoyant, build-up, negative energy about the history of that house and the fact that I was getting involved in something which I found out later has a lot of political secrets included. So when I do my work, all the names are going to have to be changed. That's how vibrant this material, this research material was that she brought to me. So I know that there is an energy that's visible, this black energy you saw off the river. It's like evilness. It's like somebody throwing up, if you will. And, this is like what happened at the Trade Center, vomiting out all this negative destruction and horrible stuff. And it has to go somewhere. So it's recycling, so to speak. Right. Same thing happened to me that night when I came home. I was carrying the memories that John had told me with me. And then I woke up the next morning. My mattress has moved at least 10 inches off its stand, and I had a crystal necklace on that had the 7 chakras, each one with a different colored crystal. The whole thing was thrown off of me, was away from me. I don't know how it could have been because it didn't fit over my head, and it had been slung across the floor. Yeah. So that woke me up to realize, because I'm rather scientific, that there's many, many things we still don't understand about energy and about spirits and about the world in general. Right. So nothing is lost. Everything gets recycled, so that's why we have to be very conscious of our surroundings, of the people we deal with, protecting ourselves psychically, and if we do that, then we can live through all these different things that go on. Right. And understand them. But I really want the audience to realize that they're not just dealing with themselves, they're dealing with themselves plus all the other energies that present themselves to them in their daily living and their life.
Yeah, this black, the mist, it was a mist. It came from the
heavy.
World Trade Center, right from
where all that
where
happened.
the towers were, and just kind of drifted close.
Yeah, it drifts.
I couldn't see Jersey. Everything
it's black.
just blacked out.
It's totally black. Yeah, and you can't see through it. You can't see through it.
You couldn't see through it.
Yeah, it's totally opaque.
It was totally. It just went black.
Right.
It was just, and it lingered there, and then it kept on going. It kind of lingered, and it kept going. What about where the point out some of the, I guess, hot spots or cold spots in New York City. Would they be where spirits are? Would they be hot spots or cold spots? Because you always hear, you feel a chill.
Oh, hot spots or cold spots.
Yeah.
Well, in the city
Really?
itself, I don't know because I love New York City. So to me, New York City's hot spot anywhere you go because I love the city and have lived there for many years.
But would spirits create a cold spot?
Yes, they would. If you're doing a house, clearing a house for someone, you'll notice there's certain areas you'll walk into, just like you're opening up your refrigerator door. It just hits you, like the coldness hits you. They say that spirits tend to congregate in basements and lower parts because they want to be near the heating unit. They don't want all their coldness demands, getting warmed up a bit. But I've had experience with cold spots, definitely, and dealing with them.
The cold spot would be because the person is passed on?
Well,
what makes that cold?
Passed on, but the spirit's cold. I mean, I guess ectoplasm is cold. It's colder than what we're used to. So it's some degrees below our normal body heat, like you and I sitting here now, and that's okay. It's comfortable. But with the spirit, they don't have the flesh and all the bones and sinews and stuff that we do. So they're dealing just with their ectoplasm, which could probably get very cold, I would think, and it does.
So what are some of the colder spots? I know there's a house that you know.
Well, there's a house, and darn it all, I can't recall the exact number of the house. I think it's around 65th and Park Avenue, and it's one of the few houses that was squeezed on the corner, and all the rest are big high apartment houses. But there's this one house, and I believe it's number 603 or 630. I can't remember the order, but it's in that neighborhood, and there's a church across the street from this house, and everybody who's lived in it has only lived there for a short period of time and then said they couldn't deal with the energies inside, and they either sold it or rented it or whatever they've done. Its current situation, I'm not aware if it's even occupied at this point. But you hear these stories about different places in the city, especially in the theater district where certain famous actors lived, or somebody, there's been a book written about that, Haunted New York, about these different townhouses and so forth. But everybody has some kind of energy or spirit in their dwelling. Some people build their homes over Indian burial grounds, and certainly in Manhattan there were lots of Indians before we got in there. So anywhere where people are buried, whether formally or informally, that emanates an energy that goes right up and it goes through the house and so forth and can cause poltergeist activity or whatever. So that's why clearing is important, to have someone clear a place when you're moving into it and whatever. Other places that I've heard of are mostly in the theater district. There were a couple townhouses that belonged to different actors. Down in Gramercy Park, there have been, which is older homes too down there. I think anywhere where there's a lot of history, like with Morris Jamel, tends to attract, What was that, One If by Land, Two If by Sea, that restaurant? Well, we went in there one night, and they have candles at every table. Our candle burned so high that people were staring at our table, and the candles went down on our table like in 20 minutes. The wax that came out of the burn part of the candle looked just like Aaron Burr and this woman that he was involved with. Everybody just looked at the thing like, well, in fact, I preserved it in a plastic bag somewhere. Don't ask me where. I'm trying to get my files cleaned out, which I'll never do probably, but I'm trying. And so that was very interesting when I saw the figures in the burned wax, and then the flame of the candle was going real fat. It was real fat. It was really wild. It was like spinning all over the place. So when you light your candles and they're very still, that means there's a calmness and a peace. But if your candles start to sputter, or they start burning real fast, or they just sort of waving back and forth, you can be assured there's a spirit in that room with you.
You're called to you'll go into a person's house. They'll call you and have you do what? I mean,
well, all right. What they will do is say, well, we're having problems with the energy in the house. We don't know what to do. We're losing things. We're hearing noises. We don't feel well. Someone got punched in the back and there was nobody there. You get all these different stories. So they'll call up, and we call our service the house doctors. And am I allowed to give a phone number
You
with that?
sure can.
Okay, it's 201-652-1177. And you can call anytime. If you don't get us, you leave a message. We'll get back to you
Give
right
that
away.
number again.
201-652-1177.
See, there you go.
And you can also get me at Joy Herald.007 at AOL.com. And Joy Herald's all one word, lowercase, and the 7 is big 0, big 7.
Okay, so Joy Herald, big 0, big 7 at AOL.com.
Right.
Okay, talk about that. You're sitting here with some paper, and we'll give that information later on as well.
Yeah.
You're sitting here with some papers. There's been a family in touch with you. Can you give us some background? Of course, we don't need names, but give some background on this.
One thing I'd really like to tell you about, besides this report, this woman sent me a report of ghostly happenings at 65 Brandy Lane. She has this annotated from October right through August. Now,
where is that now?
Brandy Lane, I think, is in New York State, up near Lake Grove, New York State.
Okay.
And she's talking about her eyeglasses disappearing from her handbag and never could find them again, but she wasn't out when that happened. And she talks about waste paper baskets being emptied, and she hadn't emptied them and so forth. And it goes on and on. Now, here's the thing. We get into long-distance viewing with all this. People want to know what's long-distance viewing. It's the ability to see at a distance. Like, for instance, some woman lost a ring, and she called, and I said, oh, it's right in the middle of your bathroom floor. It's in the rug in your bathroom floor. She said, it can't be. I just vacuumed there. I cleaned it like a fine-tooth comb. I said, I can't help it. I said, go home tonight. She worked with me, actually. I said, go home tonight. Look at the center of your carpet again. It's a big, long, shaggy carpet. And you'll find the ring there. And sure enough, there it was when she got home. So you tell me, and then another woman was supposed to inherit a great deal of money. In fact, I think her last name is Streeter. She was married to a Streeter, which is one of the leading families in near the Mayflower people that came over. And they couldn't find the will. They were going absolutely crazy. I said, it's in the big barn in your summer home in upstate New York. It's in a dusty desk. As you walk in the barn door, it's over to the left. Sure enough, they found the will. Well, I should have asked for a 10% commission on that job.
Did you know
but
about
I got
the
a lot
dusty
of free
barn?
dinners.
Did you know about the dusty barn before that?
The dusty barn? No, I didn't.
Did
know.
it occur to him to ask, how do you know we have a dusty barn?
Yeah, well, I don't know. The desk was dusty, and they never thought to look
Oh,
there.
I
They
thought
figured,
that-
who would ever bother apparently it was put in the desk, and then possibly when they redecorated or moved, somebody stuck this furniture in the barn out of, instead of putting it in storage. And sure enough, there it was.
So the barn wasn't dusty, the desk was dusty.
The desk was dusty, right. And the barn might have been dusty, too. I'm not sure. I can't remember now.
It didn't occur to him to ask, how come you knew we had no desk?
I wish I'd gotten a commission on that one. It would have been. I could have retired for life.
Now, what you're looking at, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
What you're looking at now, there's about 5 or 6 pages of document.
Well, these people
what period
will
of time?
they'll send you pages like, for instance, this one starts as, we returned from vacation in Quebec and New Hampshire. Bud hung his light blue sports jacket in the closet. The next day, he wanted the wedding solution he had left in the packet of the jacket, but it wasn't there. He searched all the packets thoroughly, and I had to buy a new bottle of this thing. Now, he took the blue sports jacket out of the closet for the first time since searching the pockets. He intended to wear it to New Jersey to visit his mom. The pockets... Now, let's see. Wait, if we got this. The wedding solution original was in the pocket. So they examined the pocket, the jacket. There were no wedding solution. Then all of a sudden, a bottle of it reappeared. So then she saw something vaporous and white before the mirror in the bedroom, suspended in air between the foot of Bud's bed and dresser. And it disappeared after a while. So that's the ectoplasm. Some people see that. It comes from the different chakras in our body and also in the spirit's body.
Well, a chakra being?
Chakra is like an energy center, which you have one in your forehead, one in your thyroid, one in your heart, solar plexus, and reproductive area. And then the kundalini, which is the spirit, starts at the base of the spine and moves up to the base of the brain behind the neck.
Okay, now you were talking about the chakras. Would that be the pineal gland? I guess that would be.
Well, yeah, that would be the pineal gland. Yeah, that's the third eye. And if you massage the forehead, sometimes you can see little things, visions and things, or you can relax a lot.
If you're, in other words, massaging your forehead, you'll.
Yeah, you sometimes in a circular, elliptical form. Sometimes it works. And I know I was having my eyebrows plucked once at a beauty parlor, and the girl was right around that area. And I thought, oh my God, I'm seeing all these gorgeous colors and psychedelic colors, and very brilliant. And at the time I didn't realize what was going on, but that was why her tweezer was activating all that stuff up there.
And what chakra? Spell that?
It's called the crown chakra. Not the crown chakra. It's the third eye, pineal gland. The crown chakra is up here at the top of the head, and you notice why a lot of people wear caps on their heads, the religious as well as laymen, to protect that crown chakra. That was the reason for the caps being worn.
Like the skull cap.
Because that's your connection with the higher self, So you notice in many religions you have these headpieces that, are very high, or they're little caps, and you have them in practically every religion.
Well, if you're wearing a cap, you miss it. You're losing the connection. Aren't you disconnected?
Well, no, because it's covered. The crown chakra is right here in the middle, and you're covering it with whatever you got on your head.
So if that's your communication, doesn't that cover it up? Or?
Well, no, it's to protect the entrance. So it's just to protect that section, of your head, so that you don't attract stuff that's going to be static.
I see.
That kind of thing. Like, and some people go past a graveyard, they will immediately put a cap on or something over their head because they don't want the spirits coming out of the graveyard and hitting on them. Now, I don't know if that works or not, because I've never, experienced that, but hey, it could happen. I had one client once who was a medical student, and she had a class where they have to examine cadavers. They had a fresh cadaver there, and she bent over the table to examine, the students have to, take bodies apart and stuff. It's not very exciting stuff to talk about, but she bent over, and she said the minute she bent over the solar plexus of this dead cadaver, she felt this thing go right into her, boom, like that. And she was like out of it. She couldn't remember a thing that she'd studied all year. After the experience, she was failing her exam. She couldn't sleep at night. She was like a walking zombie. And we worked with her. I say we because it's not me just working alone. There's spirits helping me all the time. And we worked with her for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and finally got her back to where she originally was so she could continue school.
And how do you spell chakra?
Chakra, C-H-A-R-K-A, chakra. It's an Indian. I hope I'm spelling it right, C-H-A-R-K-A, chakra, which means energy center. So we have one at the top of the head, one at the pineal gland in the forehead, the thyroid, the heart chakra, the solar plexus, and the reproductive generative area, and then the coccyx, the base of the spine. The kundalini zips up through the spine and up to the base of the brain here behind the neck.
And these were all spirits. I mean,
those are energy centers that we have inherited. Then some people say it's a spirit. Like if you look at the medical, the symbol of the medical, what's it called? The caduceus, the doctor, where you have the rod,
the
serpent, and then you have the serpent. Well, that's really the kundalini. That's moving up through the spine. So when we start to study these energy centers, and Dr. Deepak Chopra was very helpful in making us aware of these energy centers because of his training as probably a Hindu and so forth. I hope so. I don't know what he is now. He's much richer than he was when he started out.
He's a capitalist.
And he actually got into this field, I understand from what I've heard, because he couldn't stop smoking.
Right.
He was a regular traditional Orthodox doctor with those kinds of views about everything, and he said he had to find an answer. So he started examining meditation and, holistic, the vitamins and the organic food, this and that, and that's how he finally he made his fortune because of his smoking habit.
Wow.
When you think about it, it's amazing. See, spirit leads us in a way that we don't understand sometimes. But if we just hang in there and say, okay, I'm open, and I recommend to everybody, take 5 minutes a day to just meditate. Just quiet your brain, quiet yourself. And even if you get a lot of garbage, just live through it for 5 minutes. Eventually, as you keep doing it, you're going to elevate yourself. You're just going to really elevate yourself tremendously. In my metaphysical career.
Well, I guess that covers that.
I hope so.
Okay, Joy Herald, when I had a radio program in New York City during the 80s, I was on WMCA, and Joy, I had a couple of sidekicks, one Dr. Jerry Lee, and then Joy, I met you at Learning Annex.
Yes.
You did classes at Learning Annex.
Yes, I had taught there for quite a while.
Right, and that's how we hooked up at Learning Annex. And then I wound up. We did a couple of pieces together, and then I did a tour of a place called Morris Jamel Mansion in the Bronx, New York, and it's supposedly haunted. And Washington actually had his offices there during the Revolutionary War. He actually stayed there and lived there, and he could watch both rivers from that height in the Bronx to see if they were under siege at that point. And as I was doing the tour, we were up on the second floor, and Patrick Groom, I think either Broom or Groom, he was the curator, and we got up to a floor with the pantry and the cupboards and dolls. There were some dolls up there, and I guess a Queen Anne chair, a King Louis chair, whatever this chair was. Do you know a Queen Anne chair? Or?
I don't think it was a Queen Anne, but it was early English period of some kind. I think it was a wooden chair with this pillow that was covered over for the seat.
Right.
But that's all I remember about it.
Right. And Patrick, as we were talking, I could see he felt a little uncomfortable. And I asked Patrick, what's going on? He says, well, frankly, I really don't like the very odd feel I get when I come up into this area. And I wound up calling. Welcome to Visions, a series of visits to almost everywhere. I'm your host and fellow traveler, Herb Mossman. Our tape day today, or our recording day, I'm not using tape anymore, so it's I'm using a Sony MP3, so it's not a tape date anymore, it's a recording date. We're in Ridgewood, even though this is New York City Visions, a component of Visions. We're not actually in New York City right now. We're in Ridgewood, New Jersey. And I'll give you a little background. So first of all, my guest is Joy Herald. Joy, hi, and then I'm going to give a little background, and then we're going to get into our conversation. Hi, Joy.
Well, hi, Herb. It's very nice to be with you today after our many years apart. Yeah. And we're going to talk today about all sorts of things that go bump in the night, spirits, long-distance viewing, spiritualism in general, and funny experiences that I've had over the years. They were saying, but you knew it was a party, and that amazed me too. I wasn't expecting to pick that up, but that's what came through. And then the chair, I remember that something was emanating from that chair area, but at the time we never really followed through on it, except you're telling me now that the curator or the custodian of the building said that later on that was the area he was very sensitive to.
Right,
which I thought was interesting.
Early on. And then I also mentioned as your son and you picked me up at the bus terminal here, and we were driving out, and I revealed to you at that point that what they did in that area is they kind of gutted it and put up the computers there. So what would have happened to the spirit?
Oh, boy. Well, see, I feel everything has energy. Like chairs have energy, stones have energy, every piece of furniture, everything we're surrounded by this energy, which is, for the most...
Joy? A week or so later, I said, and I wouldn't give you the house. I waited till the day before and then told you where we were going to be meeting. And you went into the house the next day. We met up there in the Bronx. You went into the house. You came down. I waited for you in the garden. And you came out, and we sat down. And a couple of things I kind of knew, the ballroom and all that, where they had the dances. You said this is what. And then you talked about that chair. And you said the spirit is in that chair, and when that spirit goes through the house, it begins in that chair. That's the spirit's chair. And then I knew that Patrick was onto something, and I knew I had found a person with true vision. Do you remember that?
I do recall that, and I remember when we were out in the garden, I could actually hear the music and hear the conversations of all these people, like from a distance. Couldn't really make out what